Hello and welcome back to Tongyeong. The elite men take over now here in South Korea as World Cup action continues in one of the last events on the 2024 calendar. It's not all done and dusted yet, and it's certainly not over in terms of the chase for gold medals in the World Cup stage. But there are plenty out there in this men's elite field that will certainly be eyeing one of their last chances to pick up a gold medal this calendar year. The sun is well and truly out down there. The waters are reasonably calm. There's still a bit of a sea breeze just fluttering around the harbour side. Myself, Oliver Wilson, and former GB triathlete Helen Jenkins taking you through all of the action today. Helen, the women have set the tone in terms of some very impressive races and stories in our first elite race of the day. Now it's the men's turn, and there's still a few things to keep your eye out on as well on a Tongyeong course that it's certainly a fairly simple one to get your head around. It's the 2 laps in the water making up the 1.5 kilometre swim, and then it's the straight up the hill and back down again on the bike. 6 laps making up a 40 kilometre bike, a standard distance triathlon, of course, for you today. They work their way down this hill, albeit it's undulating up and down as they come down, back down towards the water, work their way round this final tight bend and into transition before going out on the run course that makes up the 10K run. 4 laps of this course that will twist and weave its way around the harbour front before working its way up to the Tongyeong International Music Foundation building. This grueling little hill climb that will zap the legs before they work their way around the roundabout, back down the hill and to the waterfront once more. And all that is left after these final couple of arcing turns is the blue carpet and a gold medal and a World Cup stage for the victor, the first down that blue carpet. So, Helen, who are you keeping an eye out on a blustery mid-morning here in South Korea?
Well, number 1, Dylan McCulloch, he's come in really good form from Way High World Series. That was, one of his best there with an 8th place. He didn't quite have the race he wanted at World Under 23, so I feel like he's going to be coming here and really trying to put that bad result at World Under 23s behind him.
Yeah, it was certainly an Under 23 World Championships in Torremolinos last week that Dylan McCulloch lined up with the number 1 on his swim cap at the start of that one as well, and there was a higher level of expectation around him, the world number 21, who is really starting to blaze a trail for himself. His final year really of under 23 eligibility, the elites and nothing else for him next year, of course. But there are a few others that might be able to test him, including the man that basically left the competition in smithereens in Torremolinos in that under-23 World Championships, and that's David Cantero, the speedy Spaniard who set out on the 5-kilometre run with rapid time a week ago and just made a mincemeat of the competition. It's a strong start list, as I say. Dylan McCulloch number 1, the Australian Brandon Copeland, Takumi Hojo, both very experienced athletes indeed. Cantero will wear the number 7. There's some talk as well about Roberto Sanchez Mantecon, the other Spaniard, wearing the number 9. Both have strong run finishes, and it's a course, as we've touched on already, Helen, that is very much in favour of a strong run come the end of it. And I think it's safe to say that the whole of the field is wary of those first 2 Spaniards' names on the board.
Definitely, and I think some of the men in this field know they've got a bit more of an edge on the swim, so they're really going to want to try and use that. Like we saw in the women's race where it did break up and a group of women did stay away, I think some of the men will have seen that and thought, yeah, this is what we want to do, this is the ideal plan. And they might have a chance to execute it today. It's not the biggest field for a World Cup, and then some of the athletes towards the bottom end of the field are quite low ranked in the world ranking, so maybe won't feature as much. So this is a good chance today, especially on this kind of course where there's a bit of a hill.
And when you look at McCulloch, and obviously the aim last week was to really impress, and I guess even he might have been slightly disappointed with how it all played out at the Under-23 World Championships. What does that do in your post-race reaction, especially with having to make the continental trip across here to South Asia, to South Korea, and to compete once again? Does it give you that drive, or could it go the other way and leave you feeling a little hard done by and frustrated, and that could creep into a performance today?
It's really hard to tell, and it really depends on the individual athlete and their mindset. He would have been really happy with that way high result. There was 8th place, his best ever World Champ Series, so probably went into Torremolinos for the under-23s quite confident, and then maybe just not the race. But there's so many reasons why a bad race happens as well. Sometimes you just don't feel 100%. We knew there's a bit of sickness going around as well. So there's a few things that could have happened. So if he's managed to shake that off, and I think every time you line up on a start line, it's a new chance to go out there and deliver. So he's one step closer to home as well at this point. I assume he's going back home towards New Zealand, so that's probably great, because so many of the Aussies and Kiwis base themselves in Europe for the summer, which is hard because they're away from home, they're away from families. You live out of a suitcase for so many months of the year. So for a lot of these athletes, this is the natural step on the way back home.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to do it if you can find a decent payday and a gold, silver or bronze medal as well in the back pocket. Certainly maybe leads to a little upgrade on the last leg of the flight back home as well to New Zealand or Australia. How about then David Cantero, who wasn't necessarily the highest up in the pecking order going into the Under-23 World Championships last year, but he's having a fantastic end to his 2024. Even if you take away that Under-23 World Championship victory, you look at his victory as well in the World Cup in Valencia in Spain in September. It's somewhere that he's thrived, obviously, with 2 straight wins in the last 2 years there. Does very well on home soil, it seems, but also with great confidence to finish off this calendar year.
Oh yeah, I mean, what a season. He was the youngest ever man to win an Elite World Cup. I mean, he's really, that was in Valencia the year before, so to back it up as well, to go in there. And there's a certain, he's got a certain confidence when he's racing. When he's on that run, he's in Valencia, and most Spanish crowd as well. He's getting the crowd up, he's running through, he's kind of getting them going as well. He really loves it. He's a performer when he's out there. So I think especially he'll be in a fantastic state of mind coming off as world champion. So yeah, I think anything is a bonus at this point. I actually think he comes in with a bit less pressure on him. He's already won a World Cup this year. He's the World Under-23 champ. He's ticked a lot of boxes, so it's anything that happens. But he does know his swim is where he could come under pressure. So there will, he's got to get that right today. Yeah,
it could be a make or break moment in the first 1.5 kilometres maybe then for Cantero. There'll be a fair few that will be hoping that there will be perhaps that breakaway like we saw with the ladies earlier today that can eliminate the chance of someone like Cantero getting up towards the front. And there's certainly some people in that field that will want to see the stronger runners in a secondary chase group, maybe 2 minutes further back down the road on the bike. Thinking about the experienced guys like Brandon Copeland and Takumi Hojo, they perhaps will be looking to make an early pace on the swim and on the bike. Yeah,
Takumi Hojo especially is a really good swimmer. We didn't see him start in Torremolinos last week. He was under the weather, he was sick, so he couldn't race. So I know he'll be absolutely dying to get out there racing, especially when you've got yourself all hyped up for the big end of season race and you can't go out there. There's that big kind of, it almost feels like you've raced anyway. You have that big sort of mental drain. So I think he'll be wanting to go out there and have a good performance. So look for him in the swim. He's going to be one of those athletes that's up there.
It's the last few athletes making their way down onto the pontoon. Easy to see what side is favoured by those in the yellow caps. And on this near side, the left-hand side, if you're facing the athletes from out there in the water. So we saw a lot of the elite women favouring that left-hand side. That's also the inside line, of course, for those right-hand turns around the boys on this 1.5 kilometre swim. You have to get there ahead of everybody else, though, to have those clear waters, and there'll be a fair few certainly wanting that. Can see a yellow cap right in the centre of the field there. I think that's Valentin Molek, the Frenchman, who has decided to take his spot right in the middle of the pontoon. As we discussed earlier, fortune favours the brave if you can get it right, but it's a gutsy place to position yourself.
Athletes, now you're at the hands of the starter.
Interesting to see, Brandon Copeland was very slow to step into his starting position compared to everybody else. And it's those on that left-hand side, including, I think, Dylan McCulloch, who's only nearest to that right-hand side as they go out towards the point, that are making good headway. Nicola Azzano, the Italian in the thick of things as well, just towards the centre slightly, and it'll be interesting to see where the Frenchman Valentin Molek is finding himself at the start of this swim. In the meantime, over on that far end is where we're seeing some of the leaders starting to find the best bits of water, including one of the yellow caps, which I think is Takumi Hojo out there, who is leading the trail out on the far side in the water. And then Igor Dupont, the Frenchman, leading down the centre. So we've got 3 trails basically starting to eke their way out in the water. Which one will get to that first buoy turn first?
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about Brandon Copeland, because the starting mechanism has changed since the Paris Olympics, where there was a bit of controversy of was there false starts, was there not false starts. There was different, and there was a noisy crowd, which is noisier than normal for triathlon. So the start procedure has changed. You're in the hands of the starters, or sort of take your marks, and then it's their heartbeat, and then it's the go. Whereas it used to be heartbeat, then straight away. So it's kind of eliminated a little bit of risk there. But yeah, interesting to see what people are doing, because it is quite a new procedure.
Yeah, Copeland looked very calm and casual when he was stood upright and still sorting out his swim cap, and then at the very last moment getting into position on the starting blocks as the Frenchman Dupuy continues to stride out just ahead of everybody else. But McCulloch leading the train on the inside line right now. Hojo in the yellow cap on that far side of these groups, setting the early pace out there in the water. And McCulloch, as I say, will be in rejuvenated spirits, trying to just shake off what was at least perhaps considered a frustrating under-23 World Championships. And I'll tell you what, he's not far off the pace in terms of the leader right now as they make their way up towards the first turn in the water. Sun well and truly out. The temperature's continuing to rise, already about 22 degrees or so, the air temperature out there, the water 20 plus degrees. No need for the wetsuits today here in Tongyeong.
Yeah, the water's same temp as earlier, but the air temperature has warmed up a little bit. But as we saw from those flags, it has got a bit windier out there, so that might affect the athletes, especially on the bike, because the bike is that straight out and back section, so they will have that headwind kind of coming down that hill back into town. It's not the easiest bike course here. It's just that straight out and back, and there's a few steep sections which go up to 13, 15%, which is challenging for the athletes. But we have seen in a lot of years, especially with the men's race, that this has come down to a run. But there's going to be some really motivated men here today to try and make sure that doesn't happen.
It's at least the saving grace is that the headwind is on that downhill section as opposed to going out in the majority of the uphill section, which will make life even tougher for them, although even more respite as well, as the front two are starting to almost match each other in synchronicity out there at the front. It's almost a mirror image, with Hojo just parking himself just on the heels of them. I think that's Luke Schofield just behind them, unless I'm wrong again, and it's Saxon Morgan with a 17 rather than an 11. I think it is the Australian in the green and yellow that is the 4th man behind Hojo. Schofield, the Australian, putting himself in a decent position, at least in the start of this swim. As you can see, just with that slightly larger field that we've got here with the men today as opposed to the women, how much busier it gets on that inside. Just a few fighting for position slightly shoulder to shoulder, arm to arm, as the leaders and McCulloch starts to bring them round the top section of this swim.
And they've really strung out at the front ends of the swim, so Dylan McCulloch setting a really fast pace there. He's had a little bit of an injury at the start of the year and spent a lot of time focused on that swim bike, and obviously he was helpful to Hayden Wild at the Paris Olympics and helped really, he dropped back, he was in the front group, and as that pack got closer he dropped back to the second group, did some massive turns to finally get Hayden Wild's group back to the front pack, so really instrumental there in that silver medal for Hayden Wild and the New Zealand team.
Yeah, I don't think you can pick up a medal for an assist in the Olympics, but if you were, then certainly be going to Dylan McCulloch. Very, very unselfish indeed to support his fellow countrymen.
But I think now the Olympics is gone, he'll be wanting that race, you know, in his own right. He's such a strong swim cyclist, and we saw that in the Weihai World Series not that long ago. Probably one of the toughest bike courses we've seen on a World Series for a number of years. A really strong hill. And he was the athlete at the front of that bike on the first lap, which really strung it out, and so many athletes didn't recover from that and then missed the front group just because of Dylan McCulloch's riding over those first couple of laps. So he's a really exciting athlete to have in a race because he's quite dynamic. He's really going to be aggressive on the bike and push the pace.
As we touched on earlier already, it's the likes of David Cantero that Dylan McCulloch will be wanting to leave in the dust out there on the bike and do exactly what that group of 5 up front for the women's elite race earlier today did. And that's just find that solid bit of separation that takes the majority of the field out of the equation in terms of the race for podium positions. Cantero still has the legs that he had in Torremolinos last week. No telling how far back he could come from. Decimated everybody else out there on the run. The final stages of that under-23 World Championship. McCulloch had to just sit in the rear guard and watch, taking his 8th place, which is certainly nothing to turn your nose up at, but himself with the high expectations and the expectations of others as well going into that race. He was considered one of the favourites and thought he'd be right up there come the end of it.
I think when you go in with #1, you are one of the favourites, aren't you? So like today.
It's hard to avoid, isn't it?
There's a bit of pressure with that #1 hat.
I'll tell you what, some people certainly rise to the occasion and see it as a motivational boost. For others, it does seem like a slightly more intimidating factor. I don't think Dylan McCulloch is in the latter category, that's for sure. Just got bogged down slightly last week, and just nothing really came together for him across all 3 disciplines in the end. Certainly if he can find himself with the leaders out of the water, consider that a very good position indeed.
Dylan McCulloch to really put the pressure on, because the athletes aren't even just right on his feet. The ideal place to be right tucked in on the feet. It is a little bit spread out. Maybe he's just taken a line that the athlete behind didn't want to take, but it always looks so messy from this angle, doesn't it? It looks like there's swimmers everywhere. We see lots of those yellow hats, though, definitely towards the front end of the field. And although there's no big significant breaks, it's very strung out. There's a long time gap between the first athlete, Dylan McCulloch, and maybe the athlete in 15th place. So that's what's quite interesting, and that's what might cause a break to go when they get to transition.
Yeah, it leaves a lot of people with the potential to join an early break, but it also means that there is a large number of people, and if they're so spread out, it might be a few of the stronger bike riders that might be slightly further back than they necessarily want to be, and will have to make up some ground early on, as McCulloch is the first out of the water, followed by the Frenchman Dupuy, who was trying to initially take the lead and be ahead of the New Zealand athlete, the Polish athlete as well. Maciej Buszczyk is the 3rd man out of the water, and the likes of Hojo and Co following in pursuit. There's just a slight gap starting to be created now, with after around about the top 5 or 6 athletes. So just starting to form just on the back end of one of our boats out there in the water.
Yeah, there is, isn't there? It's not much, but you don't need much. We've seen gaps in World Cups, World Series. We've seen them go from 1 second, 2 seconds, because that's just a really good transition. And that gap goes out a few more, and then that's enough.
Yeah, it's Braden Mercer in 7th, and then Nathan Lessman that are separated by 3 seconds, which is just the gap that you can see down there. Luke Schofield, Nicola Azzano and Takumi Hojo, 6th, 5th and 4th respectively. No sign as of yet. Cantero, who seems to be stuck rather far back, 30 seconds adrift in 33rd. It's not the swim he would have been hoping for.
No, that's not a good start. I mean, he's with Roberto Sanchez, Izan Edo from Spain too, so they've got some countrymen around him, but it's going to be tough in that position. 30 seconds down on the first lap. You really don't want to lose another 30.
However, Esteban Basanta, another one of the strong runners in the Spanish contingent, is 18 seconds off the leaders, and in 15th at the moment. So he another one to try and keep an eye on, and certainly another one that maybe some of those out there in the water up at the front will have circled as someone to try and leave far and behind out there on the bike. McCulloch just looking steady in the water, leading the opening pace and trying to stretch that gap as much as possible. Saw as well earlier today, even some of the best in the business like Summer Rappaport can sometimes struggle through transition and go from being 3 seconds up to 6, 7 seconds down on the leader. Doesn't seem like much, but when you're close together, like a large part of this men's field is out at the front, Dylan McCulloch drops 7, 8 seconds in transition, suddenly finds himself right back with the other group behind him. Depending, of course, how much of an edge he can eke out over the next 3/4 of a lap.
But he's got clear water at the front and he looks fantastic, really smooth. He's keeping the pressure on because the athletes aren't bunching up behind him. It's still that long single file line.
Ustizak, the one on his heels, I think, the Polish athlete wearing the blue swim cap.
Yeah, it's still him. I think he's moved up, hasn't he, from that 3rd position, just up 1 spot. That's a really good angle there to see that it is really strung out and there's a significant gap now. 2 or 3 body lengths towards the end of this group that we can see here. Now, I think if Dylan McCulloch had a choice, he probably wouldn't have the front group this big. And maybe half this size to get a smaller group working together would probably be ideal. But we'll see what happens when they get out there.
Number of maybe 4 or 5 in total.
It can be bigger as well. I think it could be bigger as long as everyone's working together. I think that's one of the keys.
Definitely played into the hands of the ladies earlier on today. Discussed in those post-race interviews how much they were all taking their turn up at the front. Certainly we saw in the second chase group behind some of the other athletes that finished strong out there on the run, just biding their time and sitting in and allowing others to do the hard graft up at the front. Remember last week, actually, Katia Shah being embraced by Maria Tomei after her bronze medal. The Portuguese athlete, though, realising that Shah had done all that hard work out there on the bike to get her in a position to do that. Not that Shah was too positive, I think, about the thank you at the end of it and missing out on a podium spot.
Yeah, I know. It's hard, isn't it? With World Under-23s, with juniors, there's an age limit. You've only got so many years to do it, and some athletes just don't get it right for those years. Something goes wrong, like Katia Shah's missed out on the podium twice now, but it doesn't make her any less of an athlete. She'll go on to be a good senior. It doesn't make a difference, but athletes tend to put that pressure on themselves, especially when it's your last year. Right, it's my last year, come on, I've got to get this good result before moving on to the next level. So we have so many successful athletes that have been junior champions and so many that haven't been. So it's not a prerequisite to be a good athlete, but there is a pressure on there for some of the athletes.
And a massive frustration when you're the one that everybody or a large number of people are piggying back off.
Yeah.
Your hard work on the bike pulls others into the equation, and then they're the ones to take those podium positions from you. In the meantime, back here in Tongyeong, McCulloch certainly getting a lot of company out there at the front. These two have almost been swimming right on top of each other for the last few meters or so.
Yeah, it's almost slowing each other down a little bit when you go up onto the hip there, but looks like he's trying to pass, which would actually give Dylan McCulloch kind of a bit of a rest on the way back in, unless he wants to be the first people out. Some people really like to be that first athlete out the water. Might have a bonus on it from a sponsor or something to be the first person out.
Ustizak at least getting his head in front for the moment and trying to surpass the athlete from New Zealand. Don't want to be fighting too much with each other and realising that you're taking the pace out of each other and allowing others to just join up again. Certainly see it on the run when you get a couple of athletes almost playing games with each other out of the front or jockeying for a position, and then somebody else can throw their name right into the hat come the end of it because the other two have been testing and goading each other and perhaps pacing each other slightly slower because they've been too focused on their battle between each other. Certainly these two in very much close proximity. They're in the water. It's a big harbour, boys. You can give yourself a bit more space if you want to. There is a group of maybe 5 or so. They've just split away.
Yeah, they have over the second lap. Then we've got that second group and then the third group. And I think the third group, talking about maybe favourites coming into this, Davi Cantero might be in that third group. We'll see when we come out, but that's a dangerous position to be in with this front end of the swim. At the moment, just seems to be going further and further away. You see some of the yellow hats at the front of that second or third group. So some of our top 10 have missed this front break. Nicola Azzano's up there from Italy. Takumi Hojo's very close.
I'd imagine, considering the swim prowess of Hojo, that he would be up as part of this 5.
Yeah, he was right there, wasn't he? That top 5 out the water last time were...
There's another yellow swim cap just behind McCulloch, although I think I saw a number 5 on the side of it, which would suggest it's Nicola Azzano.
Yeah, he's a good swimmer. He's had a World Cup podium as well, a little while back now, a couple of years, so it would be good for him to have another one. That first one's always great, isn't it? But then you get the taste for it and you want to go out there and repeat that.
It is Azzano who is alongside this leading group of 5 or so as they're going to work their way out onto the blue carpet. Not the blue carpet they're hoping for at the end, of course, but the route down towards T1. It's a decent gap that's been able to be made up as well by the leaders as the second group comes in. It's the Australian Mercer who's going to bring them through. Braden Mercer, number 87th in the world, only 14 starts to his name coming into today, but 5 podiums, making up over a third of his races, which is certainly successful.
Yeah, he's a really good swimmer, and he's converted at the senior level quite quickly as well.
He had 1 appearance in a World Cup event before today. That was his 17th place in Tissujabaros earlier this year. He did come second in the Asia Cup event in Hong Kong in October. His last event before coming out here to Tongyeong, so no doubt about the adjustment in terms of time and being prepared to race on this side of the world. Brandon Copeland coming through as well. As you can see, the top 5 only separated by 4 seconds, then a 4-second gap between the rest of the field starting to come through. Sam Morgan in there, Takumi Hojo part of that group as well. The 7 or 8 athletes in that group before another gap being created, and the Frenchman Morlec leading that next group through, although a little bit out on his own in terms of being in touch. Brandon Copeland and others down about 35 seconds, and still no sign of Cantero on our timing charts just yet. Asanta in with a chance, 18 seconds off, as I say, one of the other fast Spanish athletes out there on the run.
Yeah, and Copeland and Jack Willis, I think they'll be a little bit disappointed with that. We normally expect themselves to be a little bit closer to the front of the racing, especially on the swim.
So 2 are going off at the front right now.
It's Ben Dijkstra. He's chasing hard. He was about 18 seconds back, so he knows he's really got to push the pace up this first hill, all in, to try and get to those athletes in front. The problem is you're going flat out 18 seconds down the road, but the people at the front are going flat out. So it's a really tricky part of the race. It's full gas, and that's why triathlon's kind of unique to so many sports. You're thinking swimming or in the 10K running, then like a 1500 meter swim, the fast bits quite often at the end, that last bit where people are pushing the pace, isn't it? But in triathlon, you come out the water and it's like, go.
Go.
Yeah, it's always like the first part of the race, which is almost like the most intense.
Find the gap and then settle into your pace.
Yeah, and if you are struggling on this, but on the first couple of laps on the bike, you just have to go with it, because you're like, well, it'll get easier at some point. It does settle at some point. It's just being able to get through it.
These 2 are going off a breakneck pace. Brusiak and McCulloch, I think it is, leading us off on the front 2 on the bike right now, and they're trying to find some pace and separation away from the rest of the field. We've got 3 riders behind them, and then this chasing group as well of about 6 or so, which Dijkstra's just on the back of there.
Cameron Main and Saxon Morgan at the front of it, but Dylan McCulloch at the front here. He's been on the front since they left transition. It's a really big effort from him. Push on up this hill, and I think it's going to be see who's there when we get to the top, and only one other athlete at the moment.
So it's a lot to do as a 2, that's for sure. So that group, the second chase group with the 3 just ahead of them, it's being led right now by Saxon Morgan. Another look around, no one's really coming with McCulloch except for the Polish athlete.
We've got that smaller group there, which would probably be Mercer, Azano.
Dupuy is back in the other group behind as Mercer.
I think he's, I'm not sure if he's at the front of that group, if he's just coming off the back. It is hard for the younger athletes because the bike strength is what they haven't quite developed yet, and they get into the races and sometimes you can get away with it, but if you've gone quite deep in the swim and then you hit a big hill, that's where you might come undone, you might suffer. But I'm not sure where Mercer was there. I'm not sure if he's, I think he's still in this group.
That's 3, I think, have just been caught by the group behind and are being enveloped, so it's a rather larger group that are now chasing down this front 2, and a front 2 they're going to have to work very hard indeed, as you can see how aggressive McCulloch is taking this, getting nice and low before getting up to the 180-degree turn, the hairpin at the top of this bike course. How fast do they take this?
And this is perfect because although he maybe doesn't want to ride the whole race as a 2, they're pulling the field apart. There's athletes that aren't going to get back onto these groups. They're getting dropped early on because the pace is so high. After a while, it might settle and they might come back to that group behind, but they will have lost athletes on the way. So this initial hard pace is really breaking up the race behind them and maybe not letting those fast runners, which they don't want in the race, back into the race.
Call it a tone setter, I suppose, is what you'd say with these 2 right at the front. McCulloch being able to slot in behind his comrade for the moment. Jack Willis leading a group around that tight turn at the top of the course as well. They've got to chase on to get down the road and catch up with the other groups that are ahead of them.
So you can see here a good example of one of the steeper sections, both athletes out the saddle, really having to work up these hills.
These are the trailers. Already are starting to look a long, long way back.
We saw the 2 Spanish suits in there, so probably Roberto Sanchez and Davi Cantaro.
Not where either of those 2 would have wanted to be has been Dijkstra making his turn up at the front of a chase group. That's the leading 2, well within their sights. Kept on by Mercer too.
And Dijkstra's done well there because he was one of the athletes that was about 20 seconds down, so he's made up a few spots or made up a few seconds. He's got himself forward to the next athletes.
Mercer, the Australian, who will be slightly frustrated that that group of 3 maybe weren't able to catch up with these 2 and turn into a 5, as I'm sure a few others in the field would have liked to have seen. These 2 are doing a very good job, though, of putting a solid pace down. And you can see the gap. I know it's a faster section, so you're obviously not going to be able to see the athletes. They'll look further away than they necessarily actually are once they pick up the pace and get these downhill sections going as well. But it is a decent gap that they have ahead of the field at this point.
Yeah, and they really have, like we said, it doesn't take much. They've really turned something into nothing. There was, you know, a second between the 2 of them and the 3rd place athlete going out. It's such a small gap, but that real initial pace set at the front has made such a difference.
These 2 working well together as well. We've seen a fair bit of rotation between them.
Yeah, I think it was McCulloch's initial pace up the hill, but then since then they have swapped around.
Brzdizak able to lead on the downhill section. Probably a nicer section to lead on as well, I imagine, although that headwind isn't going to make life very easy.
I mean, yeah, it is tough today. That wind has picked up. But we seem to do have the two of them working well together, Budziak and McCulloch at the front.
Ishikawa just urging others to come along with him in that chase group behind. The man that has only had some top 25s really in his last few World Cup events from Japan.
Yeah, it's going to be a long way if these two are out front on their own for the whole race. It's almost probably a daunting prospect at the moment if they start thinking about it, but probably best not to think about it. Head down, keep going, just see what happens.
I was going to say, surely you just give it a lap, 2 laps, and just judge it how it goes. And if both of you feel you can keep rotating and keep the pace up, if that gap either stays or starts to extend, then long may it continue. You also know you've got a group just behind you that's probably about 10, 11 athletes strong, I think, at this point. And certainly, if you are struggling as a duo out there on your own, you can fall back and try and drive on the pace of those athletes and try and drop some off, as you were touching on earlier there, Helen. There's no need for that just yet. No need to even think about that right now.
No, that's a big gap, isn't it?
Yeah, probably similar size to the one that we saw in the ladies' race earlier on, after the first lap or two.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 leaders.
Great effort from those two. So I'm really intrigued now to see the split, and then we've got to keep an eye on the splits to see what they're doing, because that group behind, I think, will be getting a little bit desperate. They know just 2 athletes have gone up the road. They'll be trying to get there desperately, or even if 1 or 2 can jump over the stronger cyclists.
I've seen some small breaks in terms of group sizes in the past here in Tongyeong. 2-man is as small a group as you can technically have, of course. I mean, this would be a Herculean effort from those two as the next group comes through. It's 26.39 that Dylan McCulloch and Budziak went through in. It's almost a minute.
Yeah, and you see, I think it's Ben Dijkstra as they're coming through, just raising his hands. It's like, come on, let's get this working, because Dijkstra did a big turn to get back to that group. And initially, it feels like that tempo and the impetus was there. It's like, come on, let's go. And then it's almost kind of slowed a little bit, and they've let the gap go out. I haven't got the timing split come through on my timing yet, but we'll keep an eye on it.
It's not quite a minute yet. It's 36 seconds according to the timing chart between Luke Schofield, the Australian, and Dylan McCulloch, but it's a healthy advantage to give yourself over the first lap of this bike, and these two have no sign of slowing up just yet. There is a lead group then of about 9 athletes behind the front two.
Yeah, and then we've got another 20 seconds. We've got that group of Willis and Copeland, Oscar Coggins from Hong Kong as well, Jan Diner from Germany. They're all working together.
Then from 19th further down, there's another group around about 20 seconds back off that third group that has Roberto Sanchez and David Kentaro.
And they're over a minute down, 1:13 at that first lap.
Yeah, it's a tough place to come back from, as you see the times just running across your screen now. Stranger things have happened. Yeah, this is a duo that seem to be more than happy to work hard with each other.
And yeah, from reading the race previews and looking at previous results, this course has been seen as a runner's course, but the bike has really played a part today in the women's earlier and now the men's. Although we're only 1 lap in, so far we are using all 3 sports. So
you've got high hopes for this breakaway being able to be continued then by these two?
Well, I don't know. It's that, you know, at 30 seconds plus already, which has gone from 1 second, through 1 second out of transition, so 30 seconds in a lap. I mean, it's unlikely they'll keep gaining at that rate. So there was a huge push in that first lap. A lot of power went down at that initial effort to try and break everything up, which it did. So we're unlikely to see that. But the fact that these two are working together pretty smoothly and consistently, and already in that second pack, we've seen athletes looking at each other and waving their hands. They need to get organised, this second pack.
I was going to say disorder in the ranks in that second group that are bringing up the charge that are currently being led by Luke Schofield. But as you touched on as well, the larger your group you have, the more there are others lingering on the back that could also slow you down slightly and drag the group's pace down a little.
Yeah, it's just, or just get in the way. If you have a group moving really smoothly, and what you're meant to do is move to the front, take your turn, and when you're done, that flick of the elbow, the next athlete comes round. But if you flick your elbow and nobody comes round, and then they just tuck into your wheel and sit behind you, somebody's missed a turn. So that kind of upsets the rhythm. The person who sat 2 wheels back is then having to make a bigger jump to get to the front, if they're able. And it's just not as smooth. Whereas when you look at the 2 on the front, there's almost like quite quickly, they're able to almost read each other's language and go round when the next person's struggling and share there's always going to be one athlete that's a bit stronger, and they might lead more over that first lap or so, or first few laps to establish, but then later on in the race, we might find the other athlete coming through and doing a bit more work. So I think it becomes a bit more intuitive when that group is working really smoothly together.
About 31 minutes then, this second lap on the bike.
Just seen him coming into sight there. And it's broken up again. I mean, it means that the athletes are really struggling over the top of the hill. Or was that, no, that might be the third group catching the second as well. So that coming together is probably not going to help the second group's case.
Well, if it's being stretched out, that second group, then that will mean that there are others up at the front that are pushing the pace. It was 35 seconds the last time that we had. Definitely looks like there's probably another 10 seconds being added to that 31.45. Looks like the rough time that second group is coming round, so that would indicate around about a 45-second gap or so. Another 10 seconds may be added to the advantage by these two.
I mean, for Bridziak, just looking through his results, he was the Polish national champion last year, but he really hasn't had a huge amount of 53 starts, but not really that many podiums. Most of them have come at Polish national championships. So, you know, he really is. This is an amazing position for him to be in. He's not really had much impact on the World Cup circuit, so he's in a brilliant position here. And you're going to be massively motivated just to keep working. Although it's a 2 and that's going to make it trickier, it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, into the unknown, but there's certainly positive in terms of the naivety of being in this sort of position. Certainly helped Dylan McCulloch as well, because if he's very much settled in these sorts of roles, being out at the front, you know, he's got the ability to be up there with the leaders, and then you've got somebody who's a bit more inexperienced around you. It means that they can make mistakes, and if you want to brush them off, you might be able to at some point. When
you learn from these kind of races, so like in 10 years' time, well, yeah, remember the race, it was a 2-up and I completely blew up at this point on the run or something. They're all learning experiences, aren't they? And I think that's why you get athletes that come in and are brilliant straight away, and some athletes instinctively have great racecraft, they react well to decisions, they kind of do the right thing, but others, it does take a lot of learning. And every bad race or race where you mess up your nutrition or you miss a gap, you miss the group, it's just learning for the next time.
He's
frustrating, but learning.
He's also a great athlete for Dylan McCulloch to sit in behind, because as you can see, the Polish athlete is really sizable, and he's a big block on that bike in terms of making it easy to draft off. Whereas when McCulloch gets nice and low, and we've seen it on the last 2 laps, when he gets really low, the athlete from New Zealand, it leaves Bridziak in a very difficult position, because he's still, even when he tucks in, is far taller than McCulloch on that bike. And is still exposed to a bit of the air resistance, even when he's playing the second fiddle, so to speak.
Yeah, McCulloch he comes from a cycling background as well, but I think especially being part of the Olympic team this year, I'm not sure, some teams invest in aerodynamics on the bike, so not everyone does, but it is obviously dependent on money and how much money, but yeah, depending on how you sit on the bike, teams will have gone into a wind tunnel and tested. So Dylan McCulloch has a really great position. I'm not sure whether he's been in any or whether he's done that with Triathlon New Zealand, but he is very low, he's very aero. And that means you're just saving power, saving watts.
Every little counts as well. You're trying to extend the advantage and take some of the fast runners out of the equation. Fast runners in a pack behind them, including Esteban Basanta.
So gap when they went through last time was 35 seconds. So we're looking at whether that has changed when these two athletes come through transition again, or those chase pack. And I do believe that second and third chase pack have merged together. They were only about 20 seconds or 15 seconds apart their last time check. So over this lap, I think we're going to have a larger group chasing down these two athletes.
Around that tight turn they go. "35 seconds. Time to just keep an eye on."
함께 포지션에서 왔는데 자 마찬가지로 두 아플리 뒤로 사우드리
To the third lap, our two leaders go through. Irishman leading the New Zealander.
And I think a lot of Dylan McCulloch's races have come from breakaways or really strong rides. He does tend to do well on the tougher bike circuits.
Very little communication needed between the two at the front. They almost instinctively right now seem to know when to rotate around and take their turn.
Yeah, I think they're getting used to each other and using each other as well, who's good on which section. So Dylan McCulloch up this first section, this first hill, that's where he really did the damage on that first lap. And again, he's at the front here, really trying to utilise that bike strength. Jack Willis there is really trying to get the group rotated. Willis is just off the back of his best ever World Champ Series result. He got 9th in Way High. He's actually off the front in a little breakaway there. So he is a good athlete on the hills, but he didn't have a great swim today, and he's not really been able to execute that bike strength, or if he does execute it at this point, he's just basically dragging the rest of that big group along with him.
Still got over half the laps remaining to be able to get himself back into it, but just again, judging from the eye, it looks like that gap's gone up to around about a minute with the two leaders out in front over the chasing group. This is the third pack coming round as they make their way through to go out onto the third lap of 6. Yeah, it's 55 seconds now, the advantage between Jack Willis and Masej Brudziak.
Oh, that's a big gap. And that group has swelled.
Yeah, it goes all the way back down to Esteban Basanta in 18th, that chase group. And then the second group coming through about 20 seconds off that from Isan Ido, the other Spanish athlete. It's made up of a group that goes all the way down to Philip Pertel in 38th place. So
we're about 16 athletes in the second group, and the second group here are at risk of being caught by the third group on the road. There's only a 20-second gap between the second pack and the third pack now, so this is not good for the second pack, and I think they'll be a bit demoralised. They've already been caught once. They can't get the group working. There's definitely some frustrated athletes in there. We've seen a few of them be quite vocal, and they might get caught by the third pack again. That's good for these two men up front.
I was going to say, and these two, every time they come back down the other way, we'll be getting a sight of how that's playing out around the track elsewhere, and I'm sure we'll be thinking and be buoyed, motivated to continue their push as the rotation continues up at the front of the chase back, as Dykstra just calling out the orders, saying, come on, somebody else take their turn up front.
So Dylan McCulloch won the Youth Olympic Games back in 2018. He also wins the Commonwealth Games, and actually Ben Dykstra won the Youth Olympics the 4 years before that. So it's pretty, it's interesting to see the athletes' development path, isn't it, and what they've done, and juniors, and who they've raced at different points, but showing that some of those events quite early on in the careers are kind of helpful for the athletes as they get a bit older.
Yeah, just on that Commonwealth Games you were talking about there, in terms of the sad nature that we won't be having triathlon at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow in 2026. It's been announced in the last few days. Everybody in the sport is fairly dismayed to see such a now iconic event on the Olympics. Of course, throughout the World Triathlon Series, every single year we missed out on at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow in 2026. And it will also leave a void in terms of the opportunities for some of these athletes to represent their countries, and maybe other younger athletes to have their breakout moments at a big games like a Commonwealth Games. Very sad news for the world of triathlon indeed, that.
Yeah, it's disappointing, isn't it? I don't think there's any events out on the road. They're all within the, I suppose, the village of the Commonwealth Games. They're all indoor-based events, which obviously events like triathlons, you need to find swimmable water that needs to be checked and make sure it's safe, and all of those tests need to go on. Then you need to close roads, and all of these things, the costs are adding up. And it's such a shame, because I was at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and it was a couple of years ago, and it was such an amazing atmosphere. It was absolutely brilliant. And obviously Scotland have some amazing triathletes with Beth Potter. We've got Cameron Main, who's racing in the field. They've had medals with Mark Austin back in, I think it was 2018. So it's a shame for Scotland. They do have some strong triathletes.
There's some potentially beautiful places to be able to do it as well. You think about Loch Lomond, where you can have the swim, the bike around the loch, and then a cracking run course as well on the loch side. It's a shame indeed.
It's like our second group, maybe working pretty smoothly there on the downhill. There's definitely a few athletes at the front trying to contribute to that. We've got Coggins there from Hong Kong, Saxon Morgan again near the front, so really putting a big effort in there.
Yeah, no, just from the looks of it, it was about exactly 40 minutes that the front two went through. So if it is a minute and 10 now that's gone up, it's just a gap that continues to come up as the third group is continuing to make some fine pace indeed in catching those in front.
You're guaranteed everyone just looked at each other when they went past each other, then that look across that path, it's like, we're coming, we're going to catch you. And they're not far, it's very close now. I think this second group here seems to have finally realised the danger up front and how quickly that gap is going out, and they're really trying to get their act together, and I think they need to do it before the third pack catches them, or try and stay away further from that third pack.
I was going to say, it's just avoiding falling into the clutches of that third pack, isn't it? But it seems almost like inevitability that is going to happen, as these two out in isolation still on the road. Dylan McCulloch being joined by Maciej Brustiak, the Polish New Zealand athlete, continuing to rotate their way through. This is an uphill section, but the hard graft is real for those in the chasing group, and the Australian Mercer continuing to try and push his fellow athletes along. Nicola Azzano also has been at the front for a large part of that. There is a clear 3 or 4, I think, in that chase group that are driving the push, and the reaction just doesn't seem to be coming from many others around them.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of athletes try and get that group motivated and moving. Looks like Braden Mercer there was riding really well. I don't think Azzano could actually come through on him there. So it's a little bit disorganised still, whereas at the front they're really riding well together.
Santa at the back of what is a group that could be growing ever bigger. That third group, that chase group, can hook its way onto the back of Basanta. It did look like there were a couple just at the front of that chase group that were just starting to find an extra bit of a gap compared to the rest, as maybe some might take it into their own hands and they just need to go as soon as possible to try and reel in these two.
And the difference here is these two are pedalling all the way down on the downhill. It's just the two of them, whereas when we saw that chase pack there, the athletes at the back are able to freewheel a bit. They are being dragged down by that front group. So there's definitely athletes that are resting more in that second and third pack, whereas these two at the front just don't really have the option. They're all in now, aren't they? They've really gone for it. There's no backing down now. We're almost halfway through the bike.
There's no point slowing down and saying, let's let them get back at us. Might as well dig your heels in and go for broke. That we saw it earlier today with Julian Vermeulen and the hard work she did in terms of continuing to push on the downhills and almost falling off the back of the front group on the bike every so often, and it paid dividends with her first World Cup gold medal. McCulloch had that silver in Miyazaki in Japan in 2023, a number of top 5s in World Cup events last year. Michiana sprint champion earlier this year. It's been a fine season indeed. So much of it started to stem from that 12th place finish on the World Triathlon Series in Sunderland in 2023, and certainly that was a result that caught the eye early on last season from everybody. It's got even better, as you say, Helen, with that 8th place in Weihai.
He's a really strong member of that New Zealand relay team as well. With that swim bike ability, it's fantastic to put an athlete like that in that you know can close down a gap. It's like, oh, well, the team's got 5-10 seconds ahead of us. You know he's probably going to put it back in the swim or that initial first stage of the bike. So it's always, that's why I do love the relay, like the way the dynamic can change from, you know, some teams that are completely out of it and then they're all, you know, one leg later, they're right back at the front.
44-44, Rusiak brought them through. End of lap 3, half of the bike still to go. So the large chase group, when they're going through those tight corners at the top end and the bottom end of this bike course, again, they just have to spread out. Some have to slow down a bit more and then they all have to regroup together. No such kerfuffle from the two out at the front. Is that gap just starting to come down? Is it going out, being extended? 44-44 could be turning into a minute and 10 seconds or so, maybe.
Still not quite there, that third group, are they? They got close, didn't they, within 20 seconds. Minute 7.
You can just see Cantera at the front of that third group, just turning around, and again, a watchful eye over the others in it, just saying, come on, we need to keep moving to catch up with that group. It's not going to be a huge gap, but it's still around about 15 seconds, excuse me, separating the second and third group out there.
So close. It was 20, wasn't it? So they've managed to get back 5 seconds. I really thought it might close there. It shows that second group are still really, although maybe not as organised, they are still pushing on.
Kind of have to at this point. They see the leading duo working so well together, continuing to get that advantage to up over a minute.
We can see the chase group now. They're just at the top of the screen. I think that was Jack Willis who's at the front there of that chase group when we saw them.
Just see a couple of athletes of that chase group that, again, trying to extend themselves ahead of the rest and maybe say again, like, if we're going to go, we need to go. Maybe some need to come with us as well.
And this is what they're trying to do. Look, it looks like that chase. We've got 4 going off the front now.
Yeah, it looks like Azzano is going to be one of them, the Italian in the light blue. Oscar Coggins as well. It could be the athlete from Hong Kong. Maybe just from that aerial view, could be one of the others in that 4 that are looking to go and try and catch these two. It's looking tough though, Azzano.
Yeah.
It's the one trying to stretch it out, but the rest of the group just starting to bring them in. One other is going with the Italian right now.
It looks like it's all coming back together, but it is going to speed up their pace. It is going to push them forward a little bit. I wonder if they're regretting their decision now. That, all right, we're really going to go for it now over halfway. Like, oh, yeah, starting to bite.
Still got another half of this to go. These two, for sure, at this point, wishing that it was a sprint distance rather than a standard distance race today.
And I suppose it's part of the mentality as well. Like, once you're in, isn't it? That we've accepted this, we're going to go for it, and it's all the way to the line. Even if they got caught right at the end now, they will be pushing all the way through. But it's a nice day when you get to show off that bike strength as well, because sometimes you don't get to. If it all comes together and you end up in a bigger group or in a group that's not working, you're not really able to showcase your ability and use it.
Certainly looks strong still from these two. Ruzdizak staying right on that rear wheel of McCulloch, and once more taking his turn to go through. Again, it looks like that chase group is a little further behind than it was on that last lap. Probably to be expected with the gap just ever so slightly going up again. Willis driving hard at the front of the chasers. No one else with him right now.
I'm not sure if he's managed to go off the front or if the group aren't just that far behind him. We can't see with that angle. We need probably more of an overhead shot. But yeah, a brave attempt if he's gone solo. It's a long way to make it forward.
Looked like it just from that last shot we
Yeah.
saw there that Willis is trying to make a push on his own right now.
I think ideally if he could get another athlete to go with him, and the two of them kind of then tend to work together. Oh yeah, the chase, when we can see it in the distance, can't we? It looks like they're coming together. It has looked like that for a little while though, isn't it?
So Willis out on his own.
That's just so much frustration there. It's like, come on, like I'm trying to work, I'm trying to pull this along, so I may as well do this on my own, which is what he's decided to do. Really smooth and fast around that corner as well, noticeably faster than some of these athletes going around. And look, that's the groups merging, isn't it?
Yeah, that's those two coming right together as they slow down around that tight corner at the top of this bike course. It's brave from Willis. It's very brave indeed. Nothing worse than being out in no man's land, taking the brunt of that headwind, slowing down, and you've made a big push to get out on your own, and you still just end up falling back into the big group.
I think he's going to be feeling confident though. He's had some of his best ever results this year. So his first ever series final as well, which was 34th. But that 9th in Weihai, that's a big jump forward. His best ever performance before that was a 20th. So it's a big step up, and he was very kind of aggressive in the race, always near the front, kind of pushing the pace too. So I think you come into the race with that sort of confidence, and you want to deliver it. You want to actually show what you can do.
Top 10s in his last two trips to Tongyeong, 5th and 7th in 2023 and 2022. Knows these streets well, knows how to survive on them.
And I think for the athletes that are coming from Europe with quite a short turnaround, then it is that adjusting to the time zone as well. Because if you're on European time, you're at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. So it is obviously tough to be racing at that time.
Well, they say it takes for every hour around about 1 day to get over the jet lag cycle. So yeah, I mean it's a 8-9 hour gap between Europe and the UK.
Oh, athletes coming from the US as well. This is just the time zones do wreak havoc with races.
Don't know how they know what time of day it is, and I'm sure the elite men will be slightly happier to have had the later start today and maybe a bit of extra time in bed just to ensure that they can fully rest and recuperate.
And watch the women's race as well. If they saw a little bit of that, they might have learned something they wanted to use for the swim.
These two might have learned something about how to break away on the bike, that's for sure. Continuing their push, and only 2 laps to go at the end of this one.
So they're just over a minute on that last lap. I think they'd be wanting to extend that out to at least 1:30 by the end of the bike, which means it's been a really worthwhile effort. If it stays around that minute, they might have needed a little bit more, but who knows? Just from thinking of the way Davi Cantero ran in Torremolinos, which was, I think he ran as fast as Alex Yee and Hayden Wild. I mean, obviously the overall time was slower because in the elite race, the bike and the swim were faster. So it's not exactly the same, but it just shows the potential he has there on the run.
Yeah, really strong indeed. And it was as soon as he got out of transition, taking the race by the scruff of the neck and deciding to own it out at the front. We were almost surprised that they would have maintained that sort of pace when everybody else was just on a completely inferior level, at least on that day. So our leaders make their way round towards the waterfront once again. 2 laps remaining for these two. More importantly, how many seconds is it? These two, the likes of Jack Willis and co. 54 minutes, almost on the dot.
There's Jack Willis going past on his own.
So it's 53-52 the gap. Willis is absolutely flying compared to the field behind. It just shows how slow the rest of that group is going.
Yeah, amazing. What gaps you can make it. That's literally in just over half a lap, isn't it? I think he went on the attack, approaching the dead turn.
It's no bad thing really for these two if Willis joins them and it's just one athlete that ends up joining them. It's not the worst thing to happen in the world, and if he can get near them for that final lap, then it may be a chance to add an extra man to the equation to lead at the front and give more rotation time for these two.
Still no one else has gone through that timing split. Just having a check at the timing, see if we've had them go through. Haven't seen yet. Oh no, there's one. It's just coming up. Well, that seems like it's gone out a lot more, doesn't it, on that lap? We had a minute 7 last time through.
Could be
a minute 30?
minute 20, a minute 30. Just judging it on eye alone. Wait for the official time, but yeah, that's hard on Jack Willis. If he has gone in on his own, he still just sees those two at the front continuing to go out. 1:23, Jack Willis trails the two leaders out there on the bike course.
Which is, God, that's a big gap. There's even another, the front two have put in a good amount of time there.
Another almost 20 seconds
Yeah.
on lap 4, around about 17 or so. The gap's been extended by, and that's over the individual that is really driving a pace that is much stronger than everybody else in that chasing group, that are 1:37 back.
Team Huber Moosgerger is taking them through on that lap.
Brzdizak and McCulloch are perhaps the two that are making teamwork, make the dream work, as Jack Willis just having to avoid a coach that's just gone a little bit too far. We do have road crossings that are still open, and just we have marshals on them around the streets here in Tongyeong, because obviously business still needs to take place as normal as possible. You can see the cars on the side of the road, they're queuing up, just waiting to be given the all clear. The overzealous coach drivers almost sticking in sway. That would certainly slow down the chasing group if they had to circumnavigate a giant bus blocking half the road.
Yeah, I know, it's it wouldn't be ideal.
These two have been more than happy for that to take place now. Slight grimace as they once again prepare for the uphill climb.
I wasn't sure if that was a smile or a grimace. I could probably go with grimace.
Could be one of those that thrives on the intensity and the endurance and the pain that comes with these sorts of pushes.
Oh yeah, and but I think the positive of being in front as well, and you're dictating the race. You're in charge of what's happening. So I always think they feel a little bit, if you're sat in the pack and people aren't working, you know people are sat on the wheel and not doing anything, and they run fast. There's that sense of being out of control where you're. But when you're in the front and you're pushing the pace like this, you're completely in control of how the race is going.
How hard is this man having to work? A little look over the shoulder from the British athlete to see if anybody's still looking to make a push with him. Still looks unlikely.
Yeah, he's not got a huge amount of time on the others behind him as well, just under 15 seconds.
You're working so hard on your own. You're not making up the ground. I wonder if it's worth it, if that gap isn't going out far enough either, as these two already at the top of the course after 58 minutes and around about 20 seconds or so. They're out of the saddle, striving hard. Why, but I just get the feeling that's even further back than it was.
Yeah, it just seems to be going out every lap, every half a lap, doesn't it? It's not huge. If you think they had a minute within the first 2 laps, so it's not gone out as quickly. But I think they're continuing to. I don't think the pace at the front is slowing. It's just a little bit more erratic in those packs behind, and the packs coming together, and there's certain periods where your athletes are working. I'm not sure if Jack Willis going off the front is helping them or of no importance. It doesn't seem to be affecting what's happening up front. A little bit of communication. I'm sure they're smiling there.
It was around about 58.20 or so that they made the turn at the top of the hill. That's Willis with our moto cam going down and hasn't even started the climb yet. A minute behind at this point. So to just maintain the gap, he's got to get up to that turn and basically halfway round it. Next 6 seconds or so, really. That gap is, I think, continuing to stretch out. Even on his lonesome, he's going to get to the top of this hill here. Be closer, I think, to 2 minutes than anything else. Should be about 140 odd.
Yeah, it's really going out, isn't it? Every half a lap now. Dylan McCulloch again back into that position.
Well, then the question becomes, Helen, I suppose, have these two pushed too much on their own? I mean, 140, but if the legs are really struggling.
It's really hard to know, isn't it? I mean, it'd be quite interested to know what happened at the World Championships. So what was the difference in run times between McCulloch and Cantero? So let's have a look there. David Cantero was 29.34 and McCulloch was 31.09. So it's a big difference in those times. Yeah, around a minute and a half. So it's just, yeah, it really depends on the day. How are Cantero's legs? We know we haven't seen him. We haven't had loads of eyes on that third pack, and they've caught the second pack now. But we don't know if he did any work. If he was near the front. He was definitely on the front around some of those dead turns at the other end. But yeah, how much has he contributed to the effort? So it's really, there's so many unknowns.
We've certainly seen Cantero on the few occasions we've seen the third pack up there towards the front of it. Willis, in the meantime, is continuing just to keep a reasonably sizable gap between himself and the group behind. These two are quite literally streets ahead of the rest, though. At least one very big, very long street. They know they've only got one more lap to go on this bike at the end of this one. It's a bike lap that's coming towards the end. There's a look over the shoulder once again by Brustiak.
The speed of this ride as well, 'cause it's like they're almost going to catch that larger group of chase pack as well that we just saw going up the hill the other way. I mean, I don't think they're going to get to them, but just see how fast they are riding.
That one where you communicate to your partner up front, say challenge accepted. I don't think they need the incentive of trying to chase that last group.
No.
They've driven so motivated in the manner they've gone about this bike right now. Let's do it one more time.
The bell lap will be extremely welcome. Just one more lap to keep pushing.
Well, I'm not sure many would have had Maciej Brusiak as the man to be up alongside Dylan McCulloch with one lap left to go on the bike on their World Triathlon bingo cards tonight.
And I don't think that I would have expected to just be two athletes as well. See, Dylan McCulloch did wave his elbow there and just like, no, I'm too tired now.
Not yet. Well, he does take the brunt of the wind, as I say, the slightly more sizable Polish athlete in terms of height and stature. McCulloch having another look. He's a little further behind the Polish rider, and he's taking his time to get his way towards the front. Just a sign that maybe the energy levels are slightly going. Possibly.
Possibly. Let's keep an eye on those timing splits when they come through. So they are through bike lap 5. And we're waiting to see.
2.
It was 1:37, I think, on that last lap.
It was 1:23 from Willis, and then 1:37 with the rest of the group.
Willis is nowhere in sight though either. He hasn't managed to pull back much time at all, or if any. He's got time on the chasers, but
as I say, the last time we saw them at the dead turn at the top of this bike ride, again, very, very rough. I'm not an official timing chart by any stretch of the imagination, but it looked around about 1:40 maybe. The gap between these two and the man who was trying to go out on his own alone to at least try and give himself the best possible chance of a podium position. Yeah, you think about what happened earlier as well in the women's event, where we saw a number of the leaders from that top 5 group that were almost 2 minutes ahead down the road. Emma Jeffcoat in particular getting dropped off very quickly out there on the run.
I know, and it's a hard run. I mean, it is flat for the most part. It does say, we read the race guide, it says with one hill, but it is a really steep, tricky little hill, isn't it? And the fact that it comes later on in the run, it's so when you're not too far from the finish, you've really got to keep digging in to get up that hill. And we sort of did see with Jeffcoat where she was going in with those tired legs that it was a bit step too far. She just couldn't quite do it off the tired legs.
If that is Jack Willis just going through, this gap could be around about 2 minutes between him and the rest of the field. 2:05, the man in third, is behind the leading pair. And that is a hefty gap. That's
huge.
40 seconds that those two have put on Jack Willis in the last lap alone.
That's absolutely huge.
This chase group is going to be miles off them in terms of pace. And even the fastest legs of someone like David Cantero, it's difficult to see Dylan McCulloch being caught at this point. If it stays this way, if this gap stays this way and these two haven't overexerted themselves.
I mean, I don't think the gap's going to drop. And, oh, God, 2:28 to the main pack, to the next pack, which is Blake Harris from Canada, Philip Purtle, Kyo Cruz are leading that second pack coming through. But, yeah, that's absolutely huge.
This is mightily impressive. I haven't seen a ride like this, particularly with just a two-person breakaway straight from the get-go in a long time. Difficult to remember. And it be so successful in this manner as well. There's still a lot to be done. If they start to wane on this final lap, that gap could suddenly very quickly start coming down if there's enough energy in the legs behind them. But this is so impressive from these two.
I think it might go the other way, because I think that group behind, I don't know if they've almost given up a little bit. I mean, we're going to see some fast run times from that group. Some athletes are just going to take off, and the pacing is really interesting there. Like, if you're in that panic mode and you go out, right, got to catch, and you go too deep, then with that hill on there, it's really going to take it out of you. So it is going to be that management of level, even if you are chasing, management of effort level. And like we saw some of the athletes having watches on, that's really helpful to help them with their pace judgment.
These two are taking the turn for back home already. 1:07.30 at this turn. We'll certainly wait a couple of minutes before we even think about wondering where everybody else is. A long, lonely ride for the last 2 laps or so for Jack Willis.
I know, and I thought he might manage to get some company over with him. It's, I think that was the intention, we did see it almost happen once, didn't we? But the group are too savvy that, oh no, we're not letting 4 of you get down the road. 1 is fine, yeah, but we're not going to let, go a few of you down there.
Zano and others were looking to go with Willis. Everybody else decided to change their mind, and it forced the British athlete's hand of whether he wanted to be a part of the big group or ride out on his own.
I wonder how Marcel Brujac's run is. Like, how good is it? Because it looks like he's done okay, but he's in a unique position here, and sometimes that really does bring it out of you as well, that you are in this position where you could actually get a medal at a World Cup, and maybe we'll see something special from him on the run. Or maybe he's going to be really tired from this run, and from this ride, sorry, and we won't see that. Dylan McCulloch is used to running off a hard bike. I mean, that's how a lot of his medals have come in World Cups. Last time down the hill, always going to be good, and then once they get back onto that flatter bit, it'll be just that last little bit of preparation for T2, getting the feet out the shoes, getting everything ready for the 10K run.
It's 5K in Austin in European Cup earlier this year. Polish athlete was around about 15:40.
That's not bad.
Isn't the slowest time in the world. It's not exactly tearing up too many tree trunks, but it's definitely not going to keep him out of the equation at all, but
That's Jack Willis, so it looks like he's just going to be about to be joined.
a couple of others that maybe decided to put themselves in a slightly more profitable position come the end of this thing. That's Blake Harris up there with him. Alberto Sanchez as well, the Spanish athlete. The leading two, this last bit of the bike is going to feel just like quite a rather nice, comfortable way to head into transition. They can probably stop and have a look around and take in the sights while they're there.
Well, they might have time. It depends on how well they run off this. Got a little group working together now. Jack Willis has got company. Don't know with.
I wonder if you're Jack Willis, you're saying, well, where were you guys 2 laps ago?
Yeah, I know. It would have been nice if it was more coordinated, but this isn't cycling. There's not team radios, is there, where you go off at this time and this point and we'll attack here and there. It's just, yeah, it's not like that. The communication they do have is literally timing splits from a coach. So it's not particularly useful in terms of anything else. The rest of it they have to figure out as they're going.
Last time down onto the flat, making their way down towards the final tight turn of this bike course. Almost 40 kilometres done and dusted.
They would have been massively pleased when they hear that time split coming out of the bike. If it stayed like it is, 2 minutes 30, it's absolutely insane.
I think when they see it going out on the run as well, when they get off and out of T2 and get out onto the run and there isn't another athlete within sight, it's going to be a huge motivational boost for this pair. But after working together, the game suddenly becomes a tussle of mano-a-mano out there on the run. Culloch takes charge. Decides to just put a last quick burst down. If either of these two work too hard, or is Dylan McCulloch really feeling himself right now here in South Korea? Down into transition these two go. There's going to be a big difference in their transition spots, that's for sure, between these two athletes.
Just keeping an eye on what those timing splits were. So we were 2:05 to the Jack Willis group, that's been joined by another couple of athletes, and 2:30 to that main group.
McCulloch is off at a pace straight away. He is not hanging around at all. Brzdizak is looking a slightly more laboured figure just coming out of transition. Dylan McCulloch hits the road hard. 1:12.47 out of transition. Polish athlete 6 seconds behind and counting out of T2.
So Dylan McCulloch hasn't won a World Cup yet. You've got to think this is a very good opportunity. It's a big gap, isn't it? I don't want to jinx anything, but it's a big gap. Oh, good, look, here's the next athletes. They're not even
at that turn yet. I mean, this is extraordinary stuff.
I've never seen gaps this big in a World Cup.
Especially not, as I say, with 2 people going out alone. And then this one,
he will have done a kilometre by the time they come into transition.
And he's miles ahead of even the man in second now. I mean, if this is the sign that he felt like perhaps there was something left after the Under-23 World Championships, well, all of that extra energy reserve that maybe he wasn't able to put into last week in Torremolinos is just being all put out now on the floor in South Korea. If it stays like this is just going to be a decimation of the field.
I mean, absolutely fantastic. I think to see an athlete who, he's at the front in the swim, he might not have been first out, at the front of the bike, and now he's gone onto the run with such a big lead. And it's an interesting place to be, because it's not something you expect, is to have that much of a lead. You expect to be running with someone else, or almost that kind of tactical run. or you're just going as hard as you can to keep up with someone. So it is unusual to be in this position for any athlete with this much time gap to anyone else.
And there's no watch on the wrist or anything like that on McCulloch. This is all about feel and knowing his own pace and cadence and working it out himself. And it's interesting, out on your own doesn't necessarily encourage you to push to be with the other athletes, but it may just encourage him to just push, get his head down and crack on, and say just feel himself and get into a groove nice and early, which he seems to have done, as the chasers are only just coming out of transition. And it's not far off 3 minutes that they're coming out of transition behind either. 1:12.47, Dylan McCulloch making his way out onto the run course. Jack Willis and co.
Yeah, they're already out, aren't they?
Yeah, they've just gone through maybe 10, 20 seconds earlier ahead of this group.
Their timing's a little bit slow, so we haven't got the exact timings yet.
McCulloch just making his way around the front.
I think the test is going to be that first time up the hill, because the athletes would have gone and had a look at it. They might have had a little run on it, but it does feel different, obviously, doing it in the race. So that timing gap's through now, and to Jack Willis, Roberto Sanchez and Blake Harris, it's 2 minutes 40. And then to the main group is 3 minutes, over 3 minutes. That's Brandon Copeland, Nicola Azzano came in first, but I suppose the big runner, the one that we've been looking at, is Davi Cantero, so 3 minutes 5. That is huge.
I'm gonna say I don't think that that's gonna be made up.
I don't think I've ever seen that big a gap. I mean, and McCulloch looks like he's running well too, doesn't he? I mean, I know we've got nothing to compare him to at the moment. Brudziak is a long way behind, but we didn't really expect him to be up there. McCulloch has already got World Cup medals. He's been to the Olympics. You know, he is probably, at the moment in his development, he's a better athlete, but we can't compare him to anyone else. But he looks good. He looks smooth. Looks
really fine. It's a bit like Summer Rappaport earlier. He's just got a very simple looking stride. There's no gangle to it or anything like that. This is the man that may be able to cause any problem if there's going to be a problem. The Spaniard Roberto Sanchez, another one of the fast Spanish runners, who might just be able to eat into the time that McCulloch is putting down. We'll wait to see what happens at the end of this first lap of 4. There is also the other possibility that Dylan McCulloch might be able to just walk his way down the blue carpet and take on the handshakes and a couple of greetings with the fans out there.
Do cartwheels down there, I reckon.
Whatever he fancies.
If everything stays the same.
He might be able to get an earlier flight back to New Zealand if he really wants to, the rate that he's going.
Yeah.
McCulloch's up the hill. It hasn't broken his stride at all, at least on lap 1.
It's like the others are in a different race, isn't it? They're such a long way behind at this point.
I say Brudziak is only just making his way up this tight climb, incline on the inside that's going to feel so heavy on the legs, as McCulloch is already making his way back down the other side of the hill.
And we'll keep an eye on those splits when they come through again, of who's moving fast from those packs behind and whether they have any chance of making the inroads. But at the moment, there's obviously third place is up for grabs. If Brudziak second as well, if he gets caught. So
yeah, there's still the chance that maybe it's been a bit too much for the Polish athlete, and others behind might be able to do something if he really starts to falter. If he can put in a solid run, though, you'd imagine it's going to be enough to get himself up near a podium. Now, if that in the far of your screen is the Spaniard Sanchez, that's still a very, very big gap indeed. We'll try and get confirmation of that if and when we can, as McCulloch makes his way back down the other side of the run course, well away from anybody else at the moment. Difficult to see, trying to spot it through the caravans, thanks to our cameramen. Brudziak makes his way around the bottom of the hill, and he is only seeing Dylan McCulloch extend that advantage between the two men that have led on the bike. That's Sanchez just going up the hill right there in the dark blue tri-suit making that turn. So Sanchez is starting to motor and certainly catch the Polish athlete.
And Brudziak looked a little bit tender coming down the hill, didn't he? He was being quite cautious there.
Certainly could be some heavy legs, as this is the rest of the field that are going to be fighting it out in a very close battle. You imagine some of them for top 10 positions, maybe even top 5 positions too. The group that's around about 3 minutes behind the leading the leaders coming out of transition 2. This man is already finishing the first lap out there on the run. Dylan McCulloch flying solo. Not feel good at this point. Could be feeling very good indeed. About 3 more laps time.
That's Cantero, who's already passed through
going.
He's past Willis, so he started about 20 seconds back from Willis. So
he's making up the ground quickly.
Yeah, we'd expect that. I mean, if you look back to that under-23 race that you commentated on, I remember watching. It was just unbelievable. It was that the speed. It looked like he was on his final kilometre, didn't he? Over the first lap, it was just so fast and took it out so strong.
I think it was a shock to everybody around him as well, in terms of the group that came into that transition 2, and Cantero was off to the races, and everybody else thinking he was just trying to set an early charge and would maybe slow down. He just kept on going far, far away, much like this man has done on the bike and is trying to do out there on the run.
We did have a lot of men going out together, and they're all kind of, a lot of them are still stuck in that group, but we are getting athletes which are good off the front of that. Cantero being one.
Could be lively for those top 10, top 15 finishing places, that's for sure.
But we really have no idea at the moment for second or third. So there's just a lack of knowing the ability, isn't there? And we still haven't got that timing split come up yet.
49 seconds.
Oh, wow, in a
placing
lap.
first and second.
Wow.
Well, Brudziak did look a little leggy immediately going out on the run, and certainly didn't really find his feet as quickly as Dylan McCulloch did, who just, from the word go, has set the pace down quickly. The next one I'm interested to see is either Jack Willis or Roberto Sanchez coming through in third. I imagine it's Sanchez. Where does that gap stand between the Spaniard in potentially third place?
It could be Cantero that comes through next. He was really motoring just over the top of that hill. And it's a great to win a World Championships, but to win it in your own country is very special. And there were so many fans down there waiting to see him, and autographs and everything afterwards. It was a fantastic atmosphere.
Sanchez was about 3 minutes back, wasn't he? And now he's eaten 40 seconds into Dylan McCulloch. He's 2:24 behind the New Zealander.
Oof, that's a lot.
That is a very sizable amount of time to take out. And David Cantero as well is only about 10 seconds, 9 seconds behind his fellow countrymen. Let's not take anything for granted just yet.
So 2:24, so they were 3 minutes. Oh no, they were 2:37 back.
Oh, were they?
Then it was the 3 minutes to the Cantero group. So Sanchez,
Cantero's the one that's actually pushing.
So
there.
I think Sanchez is probably about 10, pulled back about 10 seconds. So not quite as much as we thought. He wasn't in that. So Cantero is the one that's brought back 30 in the first lap.
Still very strong
that's
indeed.
A lot,
that is
but then that's definitely enough for McCulloch. And after him being out front for so long, it would be kind of agonising, wouldn't it, if he did get caught at the line? But you do see it so many times, don't you, in different sporting events.
And it's the ability to maintain as well. As I say, it's just, if McCulloch starts to drop any more and Cantero either goes from strength to strength out there on this run course. I mean, you mentioned it can sometimes take a little bit longer to find your feet. If Cantero hasn't quite found his feet on that first lap for a bit of it, and then he's completely in stride midway through, the gap could come down a little quicker than
if
Sure, Dylan McCulloch would like.
if he hasn't paced well or kind of got, you know, misjudged, and I think the hill does make it quite hard then, because it's such a steep, short hill. It really just saps the energy straight away. It just sends that heart rate flying up, and then you've got obviously got that running downhill as well, which some people are okay at, and some people find that really unnatural as well.
Yeah, it's easy to almost get ahead of yourself, get ahead of your feet, and lose the legs a little as you start coming down the hill and resettle and resit. Tell you one thing though, that say Brudziak is certainly going to be in a fairly delicate position, I imagine, in terms of holding on to that second place despite all the hard work. That'd be, I mean, you talk about it being tough if Dylan McCulloch doesn't come away with a victory in this one. Heart would go out to the Polish athlete as well, who's joined him every step of the way pretty much. Out there on the swim and out there on the bike.
He's still got a minute and a half, but they're running it back quickly. I know, so, oh God, yeah, you hope, isn't it? But then I think even if he came away with a top 5, a top 10, that would be such a big step up in results, wouldn't it? But when you've got this close to a podium, you're not thinking about top 5, top 10, are you? You're just thinking about trying to get up there and stay in your position, hold it for as long as possible.
Don't want to let it slip away at all.
Beautiful scenery for this race, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. Not that Dylan McCulloch will be enjoying that at the moment.
He's got a chance to take it in, even if our most positive estimates for the Spanish pair, who are rapidly trying to close the gap. There's a little bit of communication there between the two Polish athletes. Kulik just giving him a couple of words as they go past each other. Kamil Kulik well behind the man who currently occupies second out there on the course. Kulik makes his way down the hill once more.
We're looking for athletes heading up the hill, the other direction. No one there yet. I think that's quite nice. That's a good little mental barrier to have, isn't it? That no one has even started that hill and you've completed it.
Yeah, only Brudziak was at the crossing as McCulloch started going down, as the two Spaniards you can see there going through.
So yeah, they're nowhere near the hill, aren't they? McCulloch only lost about 10 seconds in that to Sanchez in that first lap. And like I said, they may have as well, when they're chasing, is it going to take them a little bit of time to find their legs, or is it just go all out to try and close it down? Who knows?
Cantero has at least caught up with Sanchez. So that's an extra 10 seconds from Cantero taken out of his fellow countryman.
French athletes running together. We've got a lot of French in the field.
It's that second group, third group that's all still together pretty much. Mercer, the Australians, still in there. Dijkstra as well. The Englishmen, they're all occupying in about 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, going all the way down. Brandon Copeland at our last time split 16th. Brandon Mercer 17th. Luke Schofield 18th. The Australian trio running together as McCulloch keeps on pushing out at the front.
I do think you end up with the countries running together, don't you? We've got 4 French in that top 10. The 2 Brits are running together. I think it has broken up a little bit. That's just at our last timing check. But yeah, it's the countries sticking together. Like you said, all 3 Aussies together.
So McCulloch comes through the midway point of the run. Is it still an unassailable lead, insurmountable for those that are chasing? There are plenty that are only just getting to the tight hairpin turn at the start of the midway point, should I say, on this lapse, and McCulloch is already far out of the transitional area and making his way around that right-hand turn and out onto the other end of the run.
And 5K to go. It doesn't seem like much, but it really depends how your legs are, how you're feeling.
Here's the man in second.
I think 5K is going to feel a long way for him. He already looks like he's under a little bit of pressure. He's really gone deep on the bike, though. This is a massive step up in performance and performance levels.
It looks heavy, doesn't it? Tough. keep on working and grinding, and there could still be a podium coming your way.
Well, there's no one in sight behind, which is a real positive, isn't it?
Say Brusiak trying to keep on motoring and keep that distance as far as possible from Roberto Sanchez and David Cantero. It's going to be a good finish for third between those two as well, which is, of the Spanish athletes, has got the bragging rights in the sprint finish. Willis just dropping back slightly as he continues to go through the field on this run. All the way back with Ren Sato, who was down in 27th at the last split. There was around about an almost 18 position gap between Willis and Sato. That one is certainly being reduced. It's McCulloch making his way around the seafront. It's a nervy look into the distance that I think everybody watching this man is keeping an eye on. Whether he's looking or not is a different matter.
It's a really tense race, isn't it? Just the positions are there and we don't really know what's going to happen. And tense because these guys have put so much into it over, haven't they? And then there's been a big chase by some of the athletes behind too. We'll wait and see who's coming through in that third position.
Polish athlete, 1 minute and 7 behind, and a minute gap between he and Cantero.
Wow.
Cantero's got himself just ahead of Roberto Sanchez.
So Cantero's already pulled back 2 minutes, and there's this 5K to go. So, wow.
Might be close for Cantero, Brusiak and Sanchez come the end of this one.
Yeah, that's going to be Brusiak. I think he might get this run down.
Tell you what, if I was Dylan McCulloch, I would be pretty glad it's a 10K run right now with the way that Cantero's going out there. 2 minutes is a fair bit of time, but
yeah, he's got less now, hasn't he, of that to run? So he should be fine unless something happens. The speed he's running, he should be pretty comfortable. And it's just about keeping on doing the same thing. And hopefully he's got somebody giving a little bit of information out there about where he is, what's going on, and he'll be seeing the splits. And I think next time he comes down the hill, he might see the Spanish athletes closer to him. But you'd think he'd be confident he's got enough as long as nothing disastrous goes wrong.
Would there be a potential for not wanting to know the exact times? Because if you say 2 minutes, it might make somebody think that 2 minutes is a lot of time out there on the road, and maybe switch off a bit. Less is more almost in that case.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I think if it's a coach, they're going to know how it would affect their athlete more. I think for the people chasing, it's probably quite motivating because that gap is coming down. Although they can't get there, well, they might not get there. It's hard. I can't say for definite.
Never say never.
No,
yeah.
exactly. So I think it would be motivating. And then for McCulloch, I think it's just that informative that you've still got enough time. You've got enough time. Sanchez, he's not had the best year. I mean, he had a World Series podium a couple of years ago, but hasn't really got back to that. But we know if he gets it right on his day, he is an incredibly fast runner.
Never had a World Cup podium, Roberto Sanchez. The best he's ever had was a 4th place in Karlovy Vary in September 2022, I believe.
Wow. That's mad, isn't it? So quite a while ago. And McCulloch looks the same as he does now as on the first hill. So really smooth. And he hasn't really changed too much. So Cantero is in front of Sanchez on our last split. There's Huber Moosberger. He's running really well. He's not letting Sanchez get away. We've got a line then of French athletes as well. Aurélien Gem, Igor Dupuis. So they're lining up behind.
Yeah, Aurélien Gem, one of those that we were certainly expecting to be strong on the run. Continue to be impressed. I know they've had the build-up obviously to Paris 2024, but the rise of a number of these French triathletes over the last few years or so has been absolutely astonishing, and obviously all working towards being involved in some way, shape or form in Paris 2024.
Well, and the strength and depth as well, like at the World Championships, they've won both the juniors, the men's and the women's.
Multiple podiums.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane.
It's intimidating to say the least for some of these other nations that we necessarily think as being the top dogs at the World Triathlon table, so to speak, as Brusiak, again, it just it looks like a much harder graft in second than it does for Dylan McCulloch in first right now.
Will Brudziak be able to hold on for that podium? It's going to be tough.
First and second past each other. And I think there is a Spaniard maybe just coming around behind those trees in just a moment. Yeah, Cantero.
So he's caught up a bit of time on the road, but it's not actually that much compared to last time, is it? There he is.
Cantero crosses. It's a lot closer than he's been so far to Dylan McCulloch all race, really, considering Cantero was so far back on the swim. I think he was already 2 minutes out of the water back, wasn't he, Cantero? It was a real struggle.
It did, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it went out quite quick on the bike, didn't it?
He was in that third chase group as well that took their time to join up with the second chase group in the end, by the end of the bike. And yeah, pushing as hard as he can up that hill.
He's really got to keep pushing. He's got about 3 kilometres left, and he's got Davy Cantero chasing him down.
Cantero's getting a good sign of the carrot on the stick, so to speak. The silver medal position might just be in his sights if it can be a huge last gasp effort on this final lap of the run. A final lap that Dylan McCulloch is coming round to start in the not too distant future at all. Nothing has changed from the start of this run to this point right now.
And I feel like we're watching this now, waiting for a pass. That's what's going to be next. And this course is quite good because most of them, they can see each other along the seafront, but they're not going out and back past each other. It is just that hill section where you get a really good look. And I think that's where you've almost got to look really good, pretend. It's like, right, I'm going to look really good now while my opposition can see me. So they think I'm looking strong. You want to get the edge in every game as well, that mental game as well.
I was going to say, that's definitely you playing mind games, Helen, throughout your career, I can tell. All very nice in the commentary box, ruthless out there on the course, much like this man has been so far today, Dylan McCulloch. Running out of superlatives for the race that he's had so far in Tongyeong. He's only 2.5 kilometers away from completing.
Oh, and Sanchez has been passed.
Sanchez taken by
Huber. Yep.
So the Frenchman trying to get himself in the equation as well. It'd be interesting to see how the gap has changed between he and Cantero as well. The gap was only about 16 seconds between Huber Musgruber and David Cantero at the last split. Maybe there's a Frenchman who's going to upset the party at some point as well today. Brudziak. I'll be pleased to see that. One more lap to go. One more drive around the 2.5 kilometers here on the streets of Tongyeong.
He's got to hang in there, hasn't he? He's just got to keep going.
It's like when you see on those nature documentaries the injured gazelle and the lions are just slowly catching up to him, and you start rooting perhaps for the gazelle a little as Cantero, you can see there, keeping up that phenomenal pace that he's got in those legs. You can see the Frenchman as well making a hard push behind Cantero. The gap only 20 seconds between Brudziak and the Spaniard. And there are a few more arriving with great gusto behind. 1 minute 40, the Spaniard behind Dylan McCulloch. He is, I think, going to have a lot of time to enjoy his moment at the end of this one if he can make this last lap as fast as the others that preceded it.
McCulloch knows the end's not too far away now, but he just needs to keep his head. You don't want to think too far ahead. Stay in the moment, stay present. Think about all those things that help get you through sessions, those long training sessions where, you know, times get hard, and it's just staying in that moment. Because if you think too far ahead, that's when things might go wrong. I mean, even if they did go wrong, he's still got, a pretty big gap. Oh, so we have got the splits now. So Brudziak is 122 down. David Cantero is 142. So unlikely to pull back McCulloch, but Brudziak might be moving down a position.
Yeah, could be moving down a couple more because
yeah,
Maxim
it could be a couple more.
Huber-Musgruber is right there as well,
Yeah.
just eyeing him up from about 30, 40 seconds adrift. But
Sanchez is 5 seconds behind that. Then we've got Dijkstra another 15 behind. So it's all very close.
it's all coming to a head in the race for those podium spots behind the leader, Dylan McCulloch. One of them, you would imagine, is going to David Cantero.
Yes, you would. I would think he's going to get his way up to second, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Can he stick it all together right at the end? Is there a last bit of energy in the Polish athlete's legs to be able to hold on?
It just feels sad that he might go from second to maybe
fifth.
Well, it could be further down in the last few hundred meters. It's going to come down to the wire with him.
Not going to be much drama around this man, unless it's drama of the highest order. There is Cantero. And he is stalking his prey out on this run.
Oh, it's so close now, and Cantero, you can see him, can't he? And once you get that just in your sights, they're on the same stretch. He would have been almost tracking him. It's like, oh, there he is, and then you get onto the same stretch. It's like, yep, nearly there.
The end of this lap just can't come fast enough for Brudziak. McCulloch is getting ready to take on the hill for the last time. A right-hand turn to take on the incline. Almost no strain whatsoever. He's making this look very routine indeed.
And it's nothing but routine. We don't see performances like this all the time. I mean, to lead the swim and really push on the pace for both athletes as well, because they both work together, but then to create that kind of gap over the first lap, 30 seconds, is absolutely insane. And everyone was going hard. They were all riding hard, but yes, it's been a massively impressive performance, and the run speed is going to be slower than the fastest runners, but this is such a great all-round performance.
It just shows as well, I mean, so much of the discussion around the history of Tongyeong coming into this was the run is so important, the run is so important. But if you can work that hard on the bike, it takes the run out of the equation somewhat.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Last tight turn. The last downhill. Keep the legs together. Cantero in the background.
Oh, it's very close.
Brudziak holding on for dear life. Cantero's making extra charge. You can see the Frenchman as well, Maxime Huber-Musgruber, excuse me, is still lurking on the shoreline as well. Keep the effort levels going. I wonder if there'll be a word from the fellow countrymen again as they pass each other. Look at the urgency coming from Kulik to his comrade, to his teammate.
Oh,
Cantero's getting to him, though, on the hill.
And where's Huber-Musgruber? There, so oh, it's going to be close, isn't it?
It's going to be really close, and Sanchez isn't too far behind either. You just see in the background, Cantero's made the pass.
Brudziak needs the best kilometre of his life, doesn't he, to hang on to this podium now. He's just got to give it everything.
All the last energy reserves need to come out from the Polishman. Where is the Frenchman now?
And he's got to use Cantero if he can. Just try and stay with him. Just a second or two. Just use him on the downhill. Try and get back to him.
Just pace with the Spaniard if he can.
And again, the running for David Cantero today is absolutely impressive. Just he is one of the fastest runners at the moment in the sport. Maybe he's not as well-rounded as some of those older athletes yet, but he's still got so much time.
Look how far away he is from Brudziak already. Just saw Sanchez just making the move up towards the tight turn at the end of the hill as McCulloch makes his way along the front once more, back towards blue carpet, back towards victory on the World Cup stage. Cantero coming down the hill, Brudziak already fading away behind him. What a run from David Cantero. It's been absolutely superb from the Spaniard, who looks like he's going to pick up a silver medal. But it's Dylan McCulloch who deserves all the accolades, all the applause after what was a frustrating time in Torremolinos a week ago. It's Tongyeong that provides salvation in sensational fashion for the New Zealander. A win on the World Cup stage to wrap up a superb 2024 for Dylan McCulloch. And what an unreal way to do it. And he can just stand and watch and know that he has time to take in this victory before anybody else gets close to him.
Oh, I mean, I wonder what the biggest winning margins are in World Cups, because this is a big one, especially for the men. We have seen big gaps in the women's, but we don't tend to see this bigger gap in the men's race. So impressive from McCulloch.
Not too bad from this man either. David Cantero showing he has the run to beat almost anybody on their day, but not quite anybody. It was the swim and the bike that let him down in the end and just took him out of a position to be able to battle for first. On another day, if it had gone right, it could have been another victory for Cantero on the World Cup stage, who is still finishing his 2024 with victories in Valencia and the Under-23 World Championships and a silver here in South Korea. And Maciej Bruciak is going to hold on for that podium spot, and it's everything that he deserves today after going with McCulloch throughout the majority of this triathlon. He couldn't hold on the run, but he is so pleased to find a podium spot at the end of it, because those two in particular deserved everything that they got today after making a Herculean effort as a duo out there on the bike. Maxim Huber-Musgruber coming through to take fourth place in the end. He just couldn't run down a podium spot, the Frenchman, coming from a little too far adrift in the end to be able to find a top three. And the run as well of Roberto Sanchez, not quite enough compared to his fellow countryman Cantero, will make up the top five. There are four in the top five, Helen, that you would have certainly had down as being there.
Yeah.
There's somebody who is perhaps the outlier who's going to be still on that podium.
Oh, definitely. Came into the race ranked 36th. I'm just seeing where his world's ranking is. 280th in the world, so that'll move up after that race. Oh, amazing. Only 6 ever podiums, and most of them have been at the Polish National Championship, so that's a big result there.
Dijkstra coming in 6th. Gem, another one that we expected to have a very good run today, in 7th for France. It's the runners and riders come through in quite a rather large gaggle as they cross the line. We will get a date on some rather tight finishes. Grael coming in 8th, Pascal the Romanian in 9th, Donnelly the Canadian making up the top 10, Dupuis, Cruz, Main making up the unlucky 13, although they're certainly going to be considered the lucky 13 and top 13 today. But it is all about the New Zealander that put on about as dominant a performance as we've seen.
Dylan? Well, Dylan, that's one way to sign off your season. How was your race today?
Yeah, that was incredible. It's the way I want to race. Swim hard, ride hard, not just sit in the pack, and then, yeah, run as hard as you can. So I was really, really proud that, we stayed away, and kudos to this man. I couldn't have done it without him. He was super strong today. So.
You had a great swim, and then you and Marche just took off on the bike. Was that premeditated?
No, not at all. I felt really good in the water. I don't really normally like to lead the swim, but yeah, I was feeling good and wanted to push the pace, and then just get on the bike and push as many watts as you can and see who's around, and we worked really well together. So I'm really glad it was the two of us.
And then as the lead kept extending and extending, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I was. We don't have any staff or anything here, so I was trying to pick points on the road and then look at my Garmin and see what the time was to the pack, and each lap I could see it was going out, and I think on that last part it was nearly 2.5 minutes, so I was like, oh, far out, this is unreal. So yeah, I was quite confident coming into the run just to control it and run my pace, and I knew the Spanish guys were really quick. But yeah, still really happy to hold on.
And then heading into the run, you'd been in a similar position last year in Miyazaki and got run down. Was that playing on your mind at all?
Yeah, it was. I was hurting in the last 2.5K today. It's been a long season, and I really didn't want that to be like Miyazaki last year. So I dug deep, and yeah, the gap was enough in the end.
Congratulations on a fantastic performance.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
So, second place today, David. Congratulations on a great performance. You were flying on the run there. How was it?
Yeah, my first time here in Tongyeong, and yeah, it was a good one, but a really hard and tough race. But yeah, we could take the chase group, and then the leading group made by Dylan and Maciek, they were going strong. But yeah, I think that I was thinking all time that in a 2 minutes difference on the run, I could take them. But yeah, finally I did second. Very happy with my performance and the best way to end this good season.
I mean, you've come off a win, and now a silver medal, so that's quite an exceptional run of form.
Yeah, this is the best way to end the season, and it's always good to take that consistency on World Cup. And yeah, I'm happy, and then I'm happy for both them because they did the race hard, and I'm happy for them. And yeah, for my part, that's all the season, and yeah, very happy to finish with the second place today.
And how helpful was it to have men ahead of you on the run, so you got past the Canadian, the British, and then Sanchez as well?
Yeah, they break away the last lap, and yeah, they take like 20-30 seconds. But yeah, I just put my pace, and I try to catch them. I didn't know where I would arrive, but I just wanted to give it all and trying to get the podium.
Congratulations on a fantastic performance.
Thank you so much.
Well, Marche, I think everyone watching here felt your pain on the last 5K there. How was it?
Yeah, it was difficult, but I'm really happy with the results, and I gave it all today. On the run, I knew it's not my best leg. I felt pretty strong on the swim and on the bike. So really, all thanks to the Dylan. Like we did a really good job running away of the guys in the back. And yeah, I knew that I need to keep the comfortable pace at the first 2 laps, and on the last 2 I was just I was hearing the coach from Poland shouting to me what is the gap behind to David, and yeah, I just knew I need to give it all on the last lap. But I mean, guy is really fast, fresh cooks, world champion in under 23, so I am really happy about the result. I have never been on the podium of any major cups like European Cup. So it's means a lot to be here and stand on the podium even on the third place. For me, it's a win. It's a small win, and it's a small brick in my career, and I hope it's gonna go like this, and it's gonna go like this in the future, and I hope for a really good result also in Miyazaki. So that's all.
And as you say, you've got Miyazaki in 2 weeks, so after the success of the breakaway today, will you be trying it again perhaps?
Yeah, probably. We'll see who is going to be in the front, and I'm going to give it all also. It's going to be the last race of the season in the World Triathlon League, so I can't wait to race. That's the same thing I said to my team at home and to my girlfriend, that I'm gonna give it all. I'm gonna enjoy it today, and that's what I did. So.
Well, you definitely did that today. Congratulations on your first medal.
Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic for every single one of the men that make up the podium today for different reasons. What a superb way to sign off 2024 from Dylan McCulloch. That sort of race, his sort of race, sort of finish that David Cantero will hope for more and more of in 2025 as well, continuing the excellent run of form at the end of this year. I say Buziak with the phenomenal finish of 3rd first podium on the big stage in World Triathlon. All came from that two groups that ended up becoming one out there on the bike, that gave plenty of opportunity for a number of the athletes to find their way into the top 10 or so. We knew it was going to be a rather scattered field at that point in terms of who would be making up the top 5, top 10 spots. And they all came into transition pretty much together. We will be back in a few moments' time with the medals ceremonies for the men and women's elites here in Tongyeong.
축제 향연이 펼쳐집니다. 많은 분들 또 많이 아티스트를 데리고 오셔서 많은 변형이석을 채워주신다면 우리 또 동호인 선수들에게는 힘이 될 것 같습니다. 오늘 또 많은 선수들 좋은 퍼포먼스 보여주셨는데요. 경기에 대한 시상식 예정되어 있습니다. So after show will continue our awarding ceremony for recognizing today's great performance. Male and female athletes awarding ceremony will continue afterwards. 네, 오늘 이른 아침부터 이곳 초대삼정의 메카, 정말 천혜의 자연환경을 자랑하는 이곳 통영에서 시험 그리고 사이클 그리고 달리기 경기까지 모두 마무리가 됐습니다. 오늘 또 선수분들을 위해서 정말 오늘 이 순간만큼은 여러분들이 주인공이 되고자 많은 분들이 또 뒤에서 에너지를 쏟으셨습니다. 여러분 안전하게 경기 잘 마무리할 수 있도록 또 수고해주신 우리 많은 또 심판 선생님들, 또 자원봉사자들, 그리고 우리 수상 가이드들, 런트로에서 활약하시는 우리 많은 우리 스태프분들 다시 한번 깊은 감사드리고요. 잠시 후에 오늘 다 함께 또 축하 자리를 마련하는 우리 시상식에도 많은 참여 부탁드리고요. 내일 또 이른 아침부터 우리 아마추어 경기 펼쳐집니다. 또 내일은 특별히 우리 여배우 4명의 선수들 함께 첫 번째로 철행삼중에 도전하는 아주 드라마틱한 장면이 펼쳐질 텐데요. 정말 각본 없는 드라마라고 하죠. 우리 모든 선수가 완주를 하기 위해서 노력을 한 만큼 많은 응원의 박수 보내주시고 함께 그 뜻깊은 순간을 만끽하시길 바라겠습니다. 잠시 후에 저는 시상식에서 뵙겠습니다. All come again when awarding ceremony very soon. Please continue your support and choice. Tomorrow we have the great performance and competition to go among amateurs. Around 1,500 athletes gathered from across the world. Thank you.
Le digo, porque cada vez que se levantaba le digo, ¿qué pasa? ¿No? Y aquí pasando la noche está igual. O sea, nada. Yo al principio me despertaba a la... Yo me despertaba pues en el momento de un... no sé qué hora es. Y me despertaba y me decía, ¿qué? Aquí estoy, ¿cómo me has hecho? suelo de helado, de no sé qué, y digo, no hay manera.
La cuestión es que te has dormido al principio.
Sí, y ya cuando tú te podías dormir,
No, porque yo me quedaba como una meba así, aunque no he podido
Está guapa la carrera,
Ya, pero no me voy bien.
Está muy guapa, Está muy guapa, guapísima. Estar en un olímpico y una así de dura, ojo.
Vamos, que es la hostia, tío, ponte a los huevos, Has sido muy listo, porque ahí
no veía nada,
esos 30 segundos están
아까 본 거 같아.
거기 없으면 차 있다는 거지.
Ya, pero y en los Grand Prix no tenía fuerza. O sea,
Luego verás los
en la subida iba a 2 por hora y es que en la bajada iba más lento que en la subida. Porque me dolía mucho el estómago. A mí al final la última vuelta, desde que me he bajado tenía ganas de vomitar.
Que si estabas en el estómago podías un poco más.
Pues es que he vomitado todo lo que he comido, lo he vomitado. A mí la última vuelta, yo desde aquí nunca había vomitado tanto. No, bueno, yo estaba ahí. No, he tirado uno y digo, ¡buah! Ya está. Y de repente otro, y otro, y otro.
Buena temporada, Mejor temporada de tu vida.
Hombre,
Tú también. Una temporada de tu vida con diferencia.
que te gana el Magulo solo. ¿Te has quedado mucho? No sé, porque ya sé que nos hemos bajado mucho, no lo veías, ¿no? Hombre, si yo te he visto y digo... Y habían 2 por delante,
Let me give you a housekeeping announcement. In 20 minutes, we will conduct the medal ceremony here at this venue in front of the finish tower. I'd like to join and congratulate all together. Please gather in front of the finish tower by 1:50. 네, 잠시 후 약 20분 후에 1시 20분부터 이곳 피니시타워 앞쪽에 마련된 시상대에서 오늘 경기에 대한 시상식 진행할 예정입니다. 네, 함께 축하자리 하고자 하는 모든 분들, 경리분들 1시 25분까지 저희 피니시타워 앞에 마련된 시상대 앞쪽으로 도열 부탁드리겠습니다. Dear athletes, ladies and gentlemen, in 10 minutes, we will start the awarding ceremony of World Triathlon Cup Tongyeong 2024. If you'd like to join congratulating all the top class athletes, please join me in the waiting and gathering, the finish tower, and then the awarding stage is ready for you. 네, 잠시 후 약 10분 후 오늘 릴리드 여자부 남자부 경기에 대한 시상식 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 저희 피니시 타워 앞쪽에 마련된 시상식에 저희 오늘 좋은 퍼포먼스 보여준 선수들 다 같이 축하해주는 자리 마련됐으면 좋겠습니다. 네, 함께 해주신 선수분들 그리고 변호인분들 네, 피니시 타워 앞쪽에서 기다려주시면 약 10분 후 오늘 경기 시상식 이어가도록 하겠습니다.
네, 그건 알고 있어서 저희가 빠져야 되는 타이밍만 알려주시면 돼요. 이거 여기다 맞추고. 네.
So after show, we will proceed the awarding ceremony of World Triathlon Cup Tongyeong 2024. And we kindly invite all the valued guests who are joining this awarding ceremony, please come down and join us in the gallery and list the manifold features to the World Triathlon performance. 네, 잠시 후 저희 오늘 월드 트라이애슬론 컵 통영 2024 오늘 엘리트 남자부 여자부 경기에 대한 시상식 진행하도록 하겠습니다. 네, 함께해 주실 리뷰 여러분께서는 아래쪽으로 내려오셔서 오늘의 앞쪽에 마련된 시상대에 자리해 주시면 감사하겠습니다. Thank you for your cooperation. I'd like to recognize all the hard work and endeavors and investment who have given us to make this event possible, all the valued guests, and of course, all the staff members and volunteers who are sparing no effort behind the scenes as well. 네, 오늘 통영에서 펼쳐진 오늘 월드 트라이애슬론 컵 2024 월드컵 대회에 정말 수많은 공신들도 많습니다. 네, 오늘 함께 자리하신 또 내외 기민 여러분들 많은 투자와 지속적인 관심 외에도 또 우리네 뒤편에서 많은 스태프분들 그리고 우리 심판 선생님들 그리고 자원봉사 자님까지 정말 모든 분들의 관심과 그리고 열정 그리고 또 에너지가 모여져서 오늘 안전하게 늘 경기 잘 마무리되었습니다. 네, 잠시 후에 그 데뷔를 장식한 오늘 경기에 대한 시상식 함께 해주시면 또 뜻깊은 시간 될 것 같습니다. Once again, let me give you a housekeeping announcement. In about 5 minutes, we will proceed with the awarding ceremony of World Triathlon Cup Tongyeong 2024. And if you'd like to join to celebrate all together to wrap up today's meaningful event, please join us right now in front of the finishing tower and the awarding ceremony stage. 네, 잠시 후 약 5분 후에 오늘 뜻깊은 경기를 마치신 선수들에 대한 치라를 하는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 네, 그럼 지금부터 2024 통영 월드 트라이슬론컵 시상식을 진행하겠습니다. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 2024 World Triathlon Cup 통영 Elite Women's Medal Ceremony. 네, 큰 박수로 함께 시작해 주시기 바랍니다. 메달 시상은 대한 천리삼종협회.
Welcome back for the medal ceremony here in Tongyeong. And a very excited Belgian, I'm sure, is going to be very, very happy indeed to be taking the top step. The initiating party through the medal ceremony is just making their way down to the area and need to hand out the medals, but Helen alongside myself, Ollie Wilson, Julian Vermeulen is going to be, well, have been thinking about this moment for a long period of time, having been so close on a number of occasions. This is going to be very special for them.
Oh, it really is, yeah. I think when you hear your national anthem and the flag being raised, it makes it very real what you've actually achieved.
Great Britain! Congratulations!
Sian Rainsleigh taking the third place on the podium. The 2024 season started with such a bang for her with the success on the World Cup stage in Hong Kong, and to bookend it with another podium here in Tongyeong. Been a lot after the trials and tribulations she's had over the last 18 months or so, as will this silver medal for Summer Rappaport. Is a podium littered with narrative, littered with stories. They are three protagonists, their respective stories, that deserve all the accolades for the effort they put in today. It's especially fun to see Summer Rappaport back on a podium once again. But it's been coming for this lady. The Belgian finally gets to step up and take the top step. I doubt that smile has stopped since we last saw her doing her post-race interview a few hours ago now. Absolutely awesome moment for her.
For the flag of national athlete of Belgium. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me.
Well, the sea breeze here in Tongyeong is certainly helping the flag to flutter. Not sure whether the victor could necessarily hear the national anthem at the start of the playing of it. That is a big box ticked in her career.
Yes, great. Big smile on your face. One more. 1, 2, 3. Big congratulations. Yes, that figure, mini, K, and Korean heart. We
Sometimes they do the champagne celebration with the gents as well, so they might have to stick around for just a moment. Sometimes they also let the ladies have their champagne moment and the gentlemen have theirs. Final striker pose, summing up William Vermeulen all in one there. We'll have the elite men in just a moment. Nothing better than a podium at the end of the year, surely, Helen?
No, I know, finishing the year really well, I think is always a positive, regardless of what's come before that. I think, but especially for our podium, with Sharon Rainsley, with her funding, losing her funding, and then coming out this year and having a really solid year. Summer Rappaport with her comeback, and Jolene Vermeulen, who's been so close, hasn't she, to that World Cup. And being on the top of the World Cup podium to finally get there, it's a really nice podium.
And now the usual hunt for the male athletes has to begin. It's always one group, either the men or the women, that tend to sneak off at some point, and we have to send maybe a couple of delegates to go out and find them. The ceremony will be just a few moments' time, and thankfully they're reasonably close by, as you can see down there.
For tomorrow in the pipeline as well. So please tune up. Continue to your support and interest. Will be appreciated.
The man who's going to be taking the second step on the podium for the men, I say Wojciech, is going to have drifted too far away from the podium celebrations, that's for sure. I don't think any of them will, to be honest. Wojciech, excuse me, taking the third step on the podium. Cantero will take the second. Dylan McCulloch will take the first.
We had another gratification and validation today. Tongyeong is truly, indeed, the mecca of a triathlon. And I'd like to continue your support and entries down the road to this sport, the very attractive sport. Not only one event, but also we combine 3 events. 김호영 회장님께서 수고해 주시겠습니다. 네, 인사 부탁드립니다.
Apologies for any loss in picture just for a moment there. Haven't missed anything in terms of the men's medal ceremony. Though considering how Dylan McCulloch won it, you'd have almost thought that the ceremony would be over, considering the breakneck pace that he has taken to Tongyeong this year. Will this be enough of a consolation, do you think, for the New Zealander, Helen, after the anticipation of what was meant to be perhaps at the Under-23 World Championships? It was never nailed on that he was going to be victorious, of course, but he would have loved to have picked up that for sure.
Yeah, I think it must have just been an off day. Judging by his performance this week, it's been above, you would think, what it would have been, but then against Cantero, that's what he would have needed, that big gap, and on the flatter course there, maybe it's just harder to do, but yeah, I'm sure this is a good consolation, and like you said, finishing the season with a medal is always nice.
This is a man to keep an eye out on, and then some, David Cantero. The blistering run pace, unmatched today, unmatched a week ago, shown off as well in Valencia in September. 2 golds and a silver across those 3 events in the last month and a half or so of the season. Mightily impressive indeed. But this man drove it hard on the bike, worked impressively on the swim as well to be out in front. Just had to put enough of a 10K down to ensure there was no chance that Cantero was going to catch him. That's exactly what he did, as he said to us post-race. It was the race that he wanted to do. Last chance for the gentlemen to come together to pose for the photo.
Okay, big smile. 1, 2, 3.
Quite perhaps as excitable as the last ceremony we saw there.
Cheers or ourselves and pose for memorable moment. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Another pose. Big cheers. Great job.
Certainly less of a striking pose, that's for sure, from the gentleman, but
A little bit more reserved.
yeah.
Just wait. And female athletes, please come up.
Sure, it's going to be far from that in just a moment when the champagne starts spraying over the blue carpet. It's been another mightily successful trip for World Triathlon, or another mightily successful World Cup event here in Tongyeong. As always, we will sign it off here in South Korea with a champagne celebration. Champagne celebration that sees 6 athletes who reflect really the hard work, the hard graft, the impressive athleticism and the endurance that these athletes have to all come away with their respective medals today. We will leave it with the celebrations and say thank you so much for joining us here from South Korea. Big thank you to Helen, as always, for taking us through the action as well. And in next time in Miyazaki, and of course in Brazil in the coming weeks, the last couple of events in the 2024 calendar. It is goodbye for now. Goodbye from South Korea 2024.